Welcome back to another episode of Divine Data. I am Samantha Rose Paprin, and today I'm sat with Michael Armstrong. He is the host of the Deep Shift podcast. How are you today, Michael?
I am doing great, Samantha. It is wonderful to be here.
I'm so happy that we are sitting here in this space and time in this Zoom room, as most meetings are happening in this very interesting year of 2020. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your podcast, a little bit about your purpose here on the planet and what your mission has been and what you've been up to.
Yeah, 2020. What a year! What a year it has been. This has been the year that I started my podcast. I think a lot of people have received activations. There's certain world events when they happen, it activates people. It's just like within their DNA. And for me, the pandemic and the lockdown was an activation for me to start my podcast. And so I started the Deep Shift podcast, which is about the shift in consciousness, in human consciousness that's taken place on this planet right now. And essentially what we're going through is we're elevating consciousness levels. There's many different dimensions to it. There is a masculine to feminine dimension to it. But essentially we're becoming more conscious beings on this planet. And conscious beings are fully aware of their emotions and taking care of the planet and taking care of each other. And they're also aware of a much larger reality than kind of what is typically known at this point.
I love that. I love that. And it's super important stuff to be talking about right now. This shift in consciousness, it's almost become trendy, which actually excites me that is of one of the top trends that we see in social media these days, is that people are really interested in this because they're recognizing those activations that are happening across the globe. You know, I've always felt I personally had a big purpose on this planet, but my podcast idea came through in March at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm pretty sure it was the week in which the pandemic was called a pandemic officially as well. So it's truly incredible, right? It is to be able to recognize that microcosm is being completely reflected into the macrocosm and vice versa. And that it is not just one of us, it is all. And it is super important for us all to be listening to these activations, these calls, these pull draws to work, and to seek the information out. Just before we recorded, I was saying that not all of us are necessarily talking heads, and not all of us are meant to be on the forefront necessarily, but we're all collectively involved in this shift in consciousness. Absolutely.
You and I must have the same download server because we both received our downloads at the same time.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look at it as like this iCloud consciousness that we are all uploading and downloading from all the time. And there's definitely people here, you know, how we had met and we briefly had an Instagram live together. And we had never spoken before, but it was this immediate like resonance, just like, you are soul family. It is good to see you, brother. It is good to see you, sister. Let's get to going with this conversation.
Yeah, it was super cool. I was so excited about that. I had this very strong desire to go live. And for me, that's rare, you know, but I knew that when you have desires like that, where you like need to go to the store at this time, or you need to go live, it's because there's soul agreements and soul connections that are like waiting, like your energy, like you and I were meant to meet. You instantly, you just felt like fam. And I was just on, I was like, everyone who came on, I was requesting them to come live with me, you know, and no one came live. And you're like, hey, can I come? And then so we chatted, and it was, very purposeful connection. And like, here we are, I'm on a podcast now. How cool is that?
Yeah, it is really divine, all of these connections. You know, I love that people have been saying for ages that there is no such thing as a coincidence. And I'm really, truly feeling into that, you know, as of late. I guess in the past 3 years in total, I've been really, really connecting with soul family. But this year, especially, and through platforms in which I would have never suspected, I have found soul family. Like, for example, TikTok. I had been being encouraged by a friend who was sort of like a manager, and he was like, you need to get on TikTok. And I was like, I don't want to do these weird dances and I don't understand any of this stuff. Like, no, it's not for me. And he was like, no, your rants are going to do well on there. Your energy is going to do well on there. You need to get on TikTok. It's like, TikTok, it's a child's app. No. And then I get on there, and I kid you not, Michael, I have met so many soul family members on there. I've had such a purposeful feeling on that app. And it's like, okay, the resistance that I had is that resistance I think that we all can admit to feeling at times in our life, because we've been almost programmed to think that we are not as powerful and purposeful and meaningful as we truly are. But as fractals of this greater consciousness, we are here to be reflections. We are here to help up-level consciousness. We are here to be these divine creatures. And I absolutely love that. And I love seeing some of the guests that you personally have on the Deep Shift. You are not holding back on that show.
No holding back. Yeah, we go there. We go there. So I had my awakening about 10 years ago, 2007, so a little bit over 10 years ago. And I didn't tell anyone about my awakening because I thought it was weird. And the very last thing that I wanted to be perceived as, life happened and I learned a lot and I grew a lot and I did workshops and self-exploration journeys and all that good stuff. And eventually I just didn't really care what people thought about me. So I just shared whatever was on my mind. And my journey has taken me to some pretty incredible places with some really amazing knowledge about the greater universe and our greater reality when it comes to, ETs and, higher dimensional beings that exist all around us who are watching this planet right now. Because what's happening on this planet, to have a species that has almost 8 billion people, is almost unprecedented in this universe to awaken at the same time. So it's like all eyes are on us at this time. And I love how you said that your friend was convincing you to go on TikTok, because the same thing happened to me like months ago. And she's just like, you have to go. I was like, yeah, just like you. I was like, no, it's like dancing. It's just a bunch of teenagers, all that. But she's like, people will like your energy. It's funny. You and I have a very similar path, especially this year. And it's been amazing. And I found that there's a thirst on TikTok for conscious knowledge. And it's like, I had two followers. I'm like, what do you do? I don't get it. But the algorithm of TikTok's interesting in that it shares to people who aren't following you. So if it's good, if it's like an entertainment algorithm, it checks for entertainment value and it will share it based on the likes, views, etc. And like now I have like 35,000 followers or something like that. And all I was doing was just posting videos about, energy.
I know. I initially made a TikTok the first time he told me to do it. And I think I had 11 followers, and I had it for about a week. And I was so discouraged because I thought I was meant to like dance and then put my message with the dance. And I was like, I hate this. I don't like it. So I deleted my account and I was like, I'm never doing it again. Nope. And then something pulled me back. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll start an account again. And within 2 months, I had 50K. And I was like,
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was insane. It still baffles me to this day and I still go into imposter syndrome, because I'm still just myself. And I've known since I was a kid, like, I want to be on the stage. I want to do these things. But I thought that I wanted to be like a Broadway actress or a Hollywood actress. And I'm super glad that I'm not a Hollywood actress. And, no offense to anybody that it's not all Hollyweird, but a lot of it is Hollyweird. Mm-hmm. So I'm definitely glad that I went down the path that I went down. And I'm glad that I built a different type of stage, essentially, or TikTok built the stage and I stepped onto it, however you want to look at it. And I really do love what you were saying about how, like, this is the time for us to be doing this at work, like, and whether it's because we had this activation or not, it is becoming, like I said before, trendy, like you were saying, this thirst for this knowledge. And that is what really excites me and gives me the impetus to continue going forth with this. And I am really excited to be connecting to, soul families such as yourself, different people, like even you had Laura Faye on there, and she is really going all out there, really talking about channeling and aliens and OnlyFans and all of these different things that, once was going to be considered woo woo, is considered woo woo still to many. But I believe as the times be a changing, as the shift be a happening, is going to be the norm.
Oh, yes, 100%.
Like we're no longer going to be experiencing as many naysayers. It's going to be what we're stepping into. I keep perceiving us moving into a space and time where like telepathy and energy are greatest forms of communication and currency. We're going to not really understand how we put so much value to this like green piece of paper called the dollar at some point, because it is an energy, but it is a representation of an energy. It's tangible understanding of what we're doing right here, right now. We are exchanging energy, we're exchanging codes, we are sharing our energy outwards to the universe, and that is of great value. And it's a really interesting thing with the TikTok stuff, because we're often putting out like free content all the time, kind of expending all of that energy, but we do receive back from it. This is the work that we're meant to be doing. We're uploading, downloading from that consciousness cloud that I spoke of before. So it's super cool. I love seeing it. I also was wondering, what did you do before all of this? Like, what were you doing before the deep shift came in? Because you've had this awakening for 10 years, and now you have the platform and the people to talk to about the awakening, but you weren't for quite some time, it seems. So what was the then till now story?
Yeah, my life up to this point has been in the tech world. So I'm a tech entrepreneur. I've started like 10 companies, a couple apps, and I was pretty deep in that scene, especially in LA. There was like a whole Silicon Beach scene. Like I was just very interested when I was a little kid, like around like 8 or 9, I was a computer hacker, and I'm 38 now. And so 8 or 9, that was like around when the internet was first coming out, and it was $10 an hour to be online on AOL, which is like kind of mind-bogglingly crazy that you had to pay $10 every hour to be on the internet. So I found hacks to get online. I like needed to get online because I saw the power of what this new thing that was here. Like we had computers and it was like Oregon Trail. And then all of a sudden this thing was like, oh, by the way, if you get this modem and you dial up to this place, you can connect with anyone around the world. And at that point, no one was online. But yeah, I got help with my French homework. I found people on like AOL chat who were in France who could help me do my homework for me. So I was a bit of a computer hacker. And then I realized that you could actually make money online. You could start businesses online. And so I started like in high school, a video game trading website. And then after that, a clothing company with a friend of mine, and it was all like nerdy attire, like silly, nerdy stuff. We ended up hiring all our friends, getting an office in the Valley, and I was really interested in tech. I was starting different companies. I had like a belt buckle that was made out of old school Nintendo controllers, and like the NES, like square, rectangle ones. And that just like, it got picked up in like Wired magazine and FHM, EGM, Maxim. It just like blew up around the world. And so I got to experience what that was like for a couple years. And then like Hot Topic ripped it off and, moved on. But I had my awakening, and my awakening happened through a conversation with a friend. We were in a kitchen talking about artificial intelligence and the cellular structure of a human system and how it differs from a robotic system, and what happens when a robot dies versus when a human dies.
Come on.
A human. Yeah, I kind of like that. Could be a new company, Human.
I love it. Yeah, right.
Next generation humans. And and so I had this like fear of death during the conversation, because at the time I was like Christian, raised Christian. He was atheist. So we'd had really interesting conversations about like, he's like, when you die, over, nothing, done. I was like, I don't know about that. I think you go to heaven, And as we're chatting, he starts to convince me that we are essentially biological robots. Therefore, if a robot, like you take its battery out, it's like the robot doesn't exist. Like it's just gone. So wouldn't the same thing happen to a human? And I was like getting this like dread, this like fear of like, oh, my everything that I've known and believed to be this reality was like, little pieces were getting taken away. And I started to feel fear. And as we were talking about like what made up a human body, going into the atoms and all of that, this tunnel appeared on the right side that just swished in front of me, and I shot through it. It's like a tunnel of light. And within that tunnel of light, there was this being who was almost like made of water. It was like translucent, transparent, like very much there. Like I could talk to it, but telepathically. And it was showing me something, which was this big ball of light. And he was like, see this ball of light? This is the source of everything. And within this ball of light, there was like little like water droplets of light, like doing little dances and splashing back into it. And this thing's like, those are souls, and these are lifetimes, and all lifetimes exist and go back into source. There's no death. It's just a door that opens and you go into the next experience. And I got all these downloads of information, and then I zoomed out of the light tunnel back into the kitchen, and I was like, what was that? I look over at my friend, and he looks at me. He goes, what was that? I was like, wait, you were there too? And he's like, yeah. And so him and I had both entered and exited this like tunnel thing at the same time. And we were kind of freaking out because like that was the craziest experience that had yet happened to me in my entire life. And I was like, we just met God, you know? And he's like, no, it's not God. And like, he had this like, you know, God thing. And so we recognized, like, was there like a presence there that was like, kind of like surprised to see you in a way? And he's like, yeah. And the moment we both recognized that that presence was there, we both like zoomed back into that tunnel and then out again, this time for a shorter period of time. So that experience really set me on a path of existence discovery. Like first of all, what happened? You know, like second of all, what's the deal? Like I didn't know that was possible in this reality, because my reality was just reality. You know, you watch TV, you go to work, you go to school, you come home, and like that's kind of reality. And then there's like religion. That's you hear about like a burning bush that gave some guy a bunch of downloads of information. You know, you hear about things like that, but like written. And so I researched all different message boards of like what's the deal with this, and I finally found someone who said, in Buddhism, there's something called a Satori moment, which is a brief moment of enlightenment, and essentially the veil of reality for a brief moment gets lifted, and you kind of like peek under and be like, wow, there's so much more to reality than just this. And then, you know, it goes down again. And then you're then left with that experience to live the best life you can. So I wanted to share that experience with as many people as possible. So I started a new startup and launched it. At the time, it was one of the largest tech conferences in the world, TechCrunch 50. And yeah, I got to launch it on stage, and it was all about helping people awaken. So now my path is spirituality and technology merged together.
I love that. It is a bridge that needs to be formed between the two, and has been being formed. And I also love the synchronicities, again, soul brother, of our lives' paths. You know, I ended up somehow being part of all of these like tech and futurist conferences, like literally fell into them, I don't know, 6 years ago somehow. And I was just doing social media management. And while I was there, I was like, these are my people. This is why I've literally felt so different from everyone else on the planet, until I found that there are people that believe the same things and think the same way that I do. And I'm not crazy. And, you know, like, even people who don't believe in like the two-party political system, all of that stuff I didn't know existed, because I grew up in the world in which, you know, it's left or right, red or blue, like you have to become a lawyer or a doctor to be a success in this world, and this is it and that is that. And it was very polarized. You know, I lived in this existence of not feeling like I belonged pretty much my entire life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I always had this like impetus, this journey, this desire to like help unify. I was like, come on, guys, we're supposed to be integrating and learning this stuff together and holding hands. And that was since I was a kid. I mean, I remember one time when I was like 8 years old, when I heard them talking about politics at a dinner table, and I was like, can we please talk about something that we can all agree upon? And can't you see that like politics and religion are just dividing you guys? And they made a good joke of saying like, Samantha for president 2020 something. And I was like, no, absolutely not, though. Like, that's not it either. Like, I don't even want to be the president, because I don't believe that that system is working and has ever worked for us as humanity. I think it's been created to divide us. And that for a child to think that way, you know, felt bizarre because it wasn't what the narrative had been conditioning into most of humanity. And now I see with these new younger generations, they're a lot more switched on because they're able to sort of pop out of the matrix sooner. And that's why I'm really grateful for these platforms like TikTok, for people like you who are willing to take that energy and that mission and bring it outwards to the planet. These algorithms that, of course, the United States wants to shut down TikTok. Of course, they don't want us to be able to reach billions or millions of people from across the globe and share these ideas, which honestly, you know, like I'm often met with, you know, like mostly by my father, honestly, he was saying, you know, my way of thinking is just more old school than yours. And I'm like, but esoteric thinking from the beginning of time? Like, I don't understand how you could be more old school. And it's like this, we've kind of been put into this like new agey category for some people. And that's a way to diminish the purposefulness, the truth in all of this. So yeah, thank you for sharing that story. How incredible is it that you guys were having that conversation and that was just when the universe was like, they're ready, let's go. And you were brought into that moment together. That's really, really beautiful. So this was the one that was 10 years ago and you and him shared it together and then you slowly began to trickle it out into your existence. And now here we are. You have Deep Shift. We're on Divine Data right now. And we are helping with this shift in consciousness, you know, and to completely make myself sound loony to some of these listeners and viewers, I truly believe us to be our soul family members that we have not yet met and the ones that we have to be the true leaders of this new earth that's being created. New earth, I like to say with quotations, because we've always been here. You know, this is home, heaven on Mother Earth, but it is a lot of excavating of debris and illusion that we are experiencing right now. And that is epic.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. It's, you know, it's a bit like Christopher Columbus going to this, like the new world, you know, like humans not yet realizing like what else is out there on this planet. And yeah, it does take some people to be a bit crazy. And while everyone's like, you just fall off the edge, the ocean just stops and you'll fall off. You know, it takes a few crazy people to be like, no, I think there's something out there. And, you know, pop culture hasn't yet caught up with kind of this like latest spiritual new age trend of just this greater reality, channeling all of that. Dolores Cannon, Dr. Michael Newton, all these books that have people who channel like remarkable information. The information's out there. It's all out there. Age of Aquarius, freedom of information. It's just now it's a matter of entertainment. You have to entertain people in order to share knowledge with them. Otherwise, they're not going to care or listen. That's why TikTok is so cool. And you know, we saw with like Jaden and Willow Smith, who were trying to share some of this knowledge in an interview like a few years ago, and everyone just made fun of them. You know, like if people aren't ready for it, they just think it's weird and odd. And so one thing I want to do is be a bridge for people because reality is so much better. Life is so much better when you step into a higher consciousness point of view. You know, it's like stepping from a victim mentality where it's like, oh, I had a bad childhood and my dad, blah, 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 I'm complaining all the time, to, oh, every single thing in my life was meant to teach me and to help my soul grow. And I actually chose my parents as a soul so that I could have those experiences. You know, the difference is like night and day.
Absolutely. And you know what? It doesn't mean to say that some things that will occur in your life aren't going to hurt and they aren't going to bring you to a place of mania or whatever have you, but you'll be able to look at it and be like, but this is happening for me. Even while you're crying, you're like, this is beautiful. Yes, I chose this. And you know, we do kind of sometimes we're in flux and we'll fall asleep a little bit to certain things. And then we'll wake up again and then we'll realize and we'll be like, oh my God, that was just to help me up level. That's just bringing me to the next. And oftentimes we just need a little reminder. And I think that's all that this life is a remembering. We were basically like struck in with amnesia when we were put on this planet in this lifetime, and it's like given little like breadcrumb trails to remember exactly who we are, what we're here doing here, and why we started. And that's really epic to think of it that way. And I love being in that observer's perch and being able to say, okay, yeah, all right, I chose that so that I could then teach or heal or offer to the world what I learned and what I remembered. Because as being all these fractals of that greater consciousness, we're just here exchanging codes, reminding each other and activating within each other, like, hey, this is also your soul's purpose to do this and this and this and this. And it's like, I don't think I can do this, but actually, I know the perfect being that can. And I have experienced so many different things where like I'll have something come into my field and I'm like, that's not mine, but hold on, make a phone call. And they're like, oh, I've been waiting for this my whole life. And I'm like, haha, okay, cool. Like, I'm glad that we get to fulfill that purpose still, because it's not everything is going to be for you. And want to go back to is you saying that, yeah, some people are going to guffaw at what we're doing and saying, and they're going to make fun of, Jaden and Willow and Jim Carrey and all of the people who have like been trying. They've been trying to just put it out there. And some successfully so, because we listen to them if we're ready to, if we're seeking it. And sometimes we have this like resistance because either our soul is not like we're not meant to awaken in that way in this lifetime. That's not our purpose. That's not this round's turn. And if you believe in multiple lifetimes, then you'll know that that person's going to be able to have another chance next time if they don't get to it this time. And I think there's a lot of people who want to like shake everyone's shoulders who's not ready to wake up and scream it from rooftops. And I've been there. And I thought it was my mission to wake up the whole planet. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to be working with the people who resonate with my frequency.
Yeah, it's like everyone likes different flavors of ice cream, so everyone's going to like different frequencies of how people describe it.
Exactly. And that's why it's not a problem for like us to have very similar podcasts, because the people who are going to listen to my podcast may not listen to yours. We may have some crossover, right? And that's perfectly beautiful and okay. It's the same with yoga teachers. There are so many yoga teachers on this planet. I can't teach every single person on this planet yoga. And plus, not every single person on this planet would like my yoga style. They won't like my classes. They're going to need to go to multiple other people. We're all like these practitioners and students and teachers of everything. And everyone has that different flavor of ice cream to offer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that's another paradigm shattering belief, is that competition exists. If you're afraid of competition and like, all these little, like, you are still living in the old paradigm, because literally competition does not exist. I learned that with in the startup world, because ideas are easy. Ideas are cheap. Everyone has ideas for startups and ideas for companies and all that, but it's the execution that's important. And two people could have the exact same idea, but because they're different people, they'll execute it in different ways. It's like MySpace and Facebook were so different. My Facebook and Instagram are so different. Instagram and Snapchat. It's like they're all social networks, but they're done in a different flavor and different people like them. And yeah, competition, yeah, that's an old school belief. And right now it's all about just putting yourself out there as authentically as possible, and those who resonate will join.
Absolutely. And, that's what this whole podcast is about, is authentic leadership and inspiring change by speaking and embodying your highest truth, not the highest truth that you think other people want to hear, not what you think your mom and dad want to see, but what your soul calling is, what you felt drawn to sharing, learning, and growing about. That's what it's about. And I love what you're saying about the competition thing, because I keep seeing like the day of the gatekeeper is done. That is over. There's no longer going to be someone at the top of the rungs of the ladder that's going to be stepping on your fingers when you finally made it. If you have the answers, go implement them now. Don't wait for someone to send you the invitation to do so, because that is, it's not happening anymore. It's not a thing. And I also say, like, look, to all the people who have ever rejected me, to work with me, any of those things, to be my friend, whatnot, whatever it is, there's still like a seat at my table with their name on it for whenever they want to, if ever they want to come and join me. Because I'm not here to say, no, you're banished, you're blocked off because of competition, or I think that your idea is too close to my idea. No, that's great. I'm really glad that you received the same download as I did. Like, do you want to exchange codes about it so that maybe we can like impact the world even greater? Cool. Let's do that instead of the competitiveness and the desire to be the best or this or that. And yeah, it's super interesting. I see a lot of even like spiritual leaders who started this work years ago, and they have the great followings. They have this, they have that. They have this idea that they can't interact with someone with 10K less or followers on Instagram or something like that. But they've been speaking about how we're going to have this collective awakening for quite some time. And then all of a sudden it starts happening, and they see all these young guns out there doing the big stuff. And you can feel their ego come into play and sort of be like, no, like, oh, it's me, I'm the leader. And it's like, what about what you've been preaching, homie? Like, where did that go? And so I experienced that a lot. I have experienced that a lot. It's less and less so now that I'm more aligned in what I'm meant to be doing, and less afraid of the old paradigm ways. Those structures, they've fallen apart. You said earlier, it's the rise of the divine feminine. You didn't say that. You said feminine or masculine to feminine, but it's the rise of the divine feminine. It's not necessarily the rise of the divine women. It's the rise of the divine feminine and the fall of the patriarchy. We all carry the divine masculine and the divine feminine within us. It is finally like reaching balance because the divine feminine has been stifled and put down for so long. And this structured world is turning into more flow and ease and grace. And that is coming through in everyone. And if you're a man and you're rejecting your divine feminine, this is a really painful time for you right now. And finding that like balance is what is super integral, and to be open to that. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about what you have to say about that, because you had mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, and to all the men who are watching who are like, "What? How do I embrace my divine feminine?" The divine feminine is embracing your emotions. And the old school masculine is one who would suppress his emotions. Don't cry, like don't be a girl, all that kind of stuff. And all that does is create mental issues, mental health issues that will come out later in life because you've suppressed all your emotions. It could turn into disease, all that kind of stuff. And so it is a man who is simply in tune with his emotions and willing to share, willing to look at, willing to embrace, willing to cry, laugh, be sad, anger, all of that. And also to help other people embrace their emotions too. And from that, just everything kind of stems from that: compassion, empathy. And that's really what the planet needs right now, because we have lived in a masculine dominant world. And to a certain part, it was necessary because humans were wild creatures. And we had to kind of essentially, like, in a way, dominate the planet. I think it was done with this extreme masculine. So now we're like trying to like push it back. But it was done through like war and killing and all that, which is super unnecessary. But when you are exploring new lands, you do need powerful leaders, like masculine, that powerful energy to lead and to go new places. And we've officially done that. Like we've made our way around the planet. We've mapped the planet. We've done like the masculine explorer thing. And now because we've gone so far masculine with war and killing and just all that, we need to like dial it back a few notches, and rebalance it to the divine feminine, which is one who takes care of the planet and takes care of each other.
Absolutely. And we are seeing that more so than ever right now, especially, we've experienced this like pandemic, which has led to this like loneliness epidemic, which has led to, not even led to, it just happened to fall into the year of the race wars, and then the election and all of this stuff, which is creating a ton of division, and yet we're also seeing a lot of connection being made too. Lots of connections because we're being forced to find ways to connect in which we didn't do so before. We're also, all the distractions are taken away from us. So it's harder to not be tuned into your emotions. And it's really important that we have that empathy and compassion for one another, and we learn to like come together, really hold hands and integrate, rather than do what, you know, the more nefarious entities and energies on the planet seek to see for humanity, which is the polarization, the division, the war. What is the word I'm looking for? Tactic. There you go. War tactic that is divide and conquer. That's not what's meant to be happening. And yeah, all eyes are on us right now in many ways, you know, planetary wise, where, you know, we have the ET entities that are watching us. And then we have, you know, in just the United States, for example, other countries sort of full on binoculars looking in to see what's happening in America. And we're doing okay. You know, we're getting there. We're getting there. And I see a lot of really beautiful progression in it, but we can do better. We still can do better. We have to do better. Because I really do also see Mother Nature sort of being this very compassionate, wise, and loving mother, but she's waiting there with a big red eject button in her hand, and she can press it at any time and just start over again.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
she doesn't necessarily need us to take care of her, but we need to take care of her to take care of us. And we have the responsibility, and that is super important. And we need to take care of each other in order to recognize that we're so intrinsically connected to Mother Nature, to Earth, to this planet. And we're being given this gift to live here in this physical skin suit as many times as our souls so choose, and all of that, until eventually she may just say, no more, restart, eject, y'all done fucked up.
Yeah.
um, and that's that true balance. That's that true, like, tough love of like a real compassionate, strong, earthy mother that's here
Mhm.
to coddle us in many ways, but also say, okay, let's go. Like, time to get your stuff together. No more of this nonsense.
Yeah, very, very easy for Earth just to wipe us all out. You know, tides change, continents change. You know, it's pretty easy to wipe out an entire civilization from the Earth's point of view. We are little specks of dust on the surface, and so yeah, and it's happened many times before in ancient civilizations, Atlantis, Lemuria, where they just got too far out towards the destructive aspect, too much in the masculine, looking at new weapons, you know, using crystal technology. They didn't want to get in the wrong hands. There's a whole story around that. A lot of channeled materials that all line up. So I see that as truth when multiple sources all line up in the same way, especially when someone subconsciously speaks about it. And yeah, we're pretty close right now. We're like teetering on the line of the destruction and not. From what I hear, we are leaning more towards the line of not of actually making it,
Mhm.
which would be pretty cool.
Yeah, we're definitely stepping onto the higher timelines, but you know, I think we are being a witness to in this year, um, how quickly things can shift, and that's what's important. Sorry to interrupt. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, no, that was pretty much it. But the what I do want to talk about is relationships, and that everything that we are talking about, it all boils down to relationships, and I see that as the key for everything that's happening right now. And there's the old paradigm relationship and there's new paradigm relationship, and that's both with ourself and with the people around us. And as we grow into like this higher consciousness, it's essentially going to have our relationships grow into this higher consciousness level of relationship. So just to give like a contrast, like what is the difference between the two? The old relationship, old paradigm is there's it's one that has fighting, it has jealousy, it has all those low frequency emotions. You know, maybe a man's in charge and the woman's like subservient, or you know, it's got all that like the old school stuff. And then and then like when that relationship ends, there's anger and jealousy, and like you want to get back at them, you want to make them jealous, like all that kind of silly nonsense that was perpetuated in our pop culture, 80s, 90s. It's gotten a lot better. It's cool, like being a few decades old now, and that I could see how things are progressing, and it's progressing really quickly and quite incredibly. With like gay rights and even like marijuana and like all that stuff, it went from like bad to highly accepted. And then so the new paradigm relationship is one of equal love and seeing everything as a growth opportunity. We talk about like seeing everything in that manner, and if you do that in a relationship, it's pretty phenomenal. And then as men, if we embrace our emotions within relationships, that's like gold to the feminine. Like for a man to be able to express himself, that deepens the relationship. And I just think women are so wise, and they have such like a wealth of wisdom. And when men step into their emotions, share vulnerably, it just like unlocks something. And I think women just absolutely love that. And having conversations, being vulnerable and having transparent conversations, like it's okay to find someone else attractive. That is 100% okay. And in any relationship where it's like, don't look at her, it's like, okay, there's some jealousy issues we should talk about and work through, because, we need to step into this new paradigm of relationship building. And it's something that I'm extremely excited about right now. I haven't really done anything yet, but I would like to create some like courses and all different things to help people step into what these new relationships are.
Totally. And I just actually got done with a podcast with this guy who wrote a book on authentic relating. And to be able to truly like dive into like the somatics even of what you're like hearing from what someone else is saying, and like what's coming up for you while they're speaking, and being able to be transparent about that, being able to drop boundaries when you need to drop boundaries, being able to like tell them exactly how it made you feel, even if you're scared it might hurt them. And then like the jealousy thing, like this didn't come up in the podcast, but for me, I had like an awakening to what jealousy was. And I was like, oh my God, it's a social construct. That's just another social construct. And I was
100%.
like, blew my mind, because I definitely spent, a couple of years of my life in relationships after having had some trauma in some relationships where I was jealous. And I was like, you can't be friends on Facebook with any of your ex-lovers. Like you have to delete them all, take them out of your phone book. None of it, none of it, none of it. No, you can't even speak. And now I'm like, oh my God, you think my man is attractive, right? Like, isn't he though? That's so amazing. And also, like, I'm not necessarily polyamorous, but if I'm not in a relationship, but if I was and my partner were to say to me, like, look, I was at the grocery store and I met this being who just like, they seem to have these things, and you have a lot of the things that I want, but they have some other things that you don't have. And I want to explore that. I'd be like, oh my God, please go do that. Please go fulfill that part of yourself that is like so necessary to like, you can't squash that and not have that. And maybe that doesn't necessarily even mean like them going off to have intercourse, but maybe it does. And maybe intercourse isn't even like, it's a sacred act, but is it only meant to be shared between two people for the rest of their lives forever and ever? I don't know. Yeah. I haven't figured that one out yet, because I haven't lived the rest of my life. So I have no idea.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting thing too, because in the old paradigm of a relationship, it was like, like ball and chain, handcuff the person to you so they can't see anyone or look at anyone. But it's an interesting aspect. I suppose at that point, if you let them go off and do what they wanted, it would be a kind of form of polyamorous relationship. I have experimented with like open relationships. And it usually happens towards the end of a relationship when like we kind of feel like perhaps the relationship is ending, but we don't just want to like end it. So we're like, why don't we just open it? So we're like, we're still together, but if we meet anyone, like we're both free to explore those possibilities. The only agreement, and relationships are only a set of agreements. Literally, relationships are agreements. It's just we have a collective set of agreements that we say relationships are. If the agreement is we are open about everything and we talk about our communication's totally open. Like if you like someone, if you met someone, if you want to take something further with someone, just be open and talk about it. And that actually has really helped in the transitional period in my relationships to help us like really like with love move on.
Oh, I love that you just said that. You pulled it like almost verbatim out of my mouth. I was going to say it's like consciously transitioning, and like there's like this conscious uncoupling that is like this kind of a new fad, and it should be. It should be a fad. It doesn't have to be this explosive, like, well, F you and F you, and oh gosh, I really hate my ex. It's like, no, what? You hate your ex? Like,
Yeah.
you had so much love for them. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And to even go further into this new paradigm world, yes, I guess what I explained is a form of polyamory, but that's just because we've created these semantics to explain different things in these boxes. And I'm like, spirituality doesn't have a box. I don't have a box. Like, I don't have to look like anything. I don't have to be like anything. You know, to go down a rabbit hole that would be a whole other episode in of itself, is like, I just see us all as beings, because we all carry an energies, and we all carry the divine masculine, divine feminine. And yes, I'm the female archetype, sure, but I don't want to be put in any box. I don't want to necessarily only be woman and expected to be like woman. And I don't expect you to be man and only to be like man. I want you to be like your energy, and that's what you are. And no, I've never been with a woman. I've definitely made out with some, but it's not really my flavor. It's not my ice cream, but I don't know. Again, I haven't lived the rest of my life. So like, who am I to say I won't fall deeply and madly in love with a woman the way I've fallen deeply and madly in love with men before? It's energies, and instead of having these social constructs, I'm just like, no, let me be free. Let me be this energy. And that's all I want to be. And that's hard for people to see. I don't like want to be considered white even, but that's not because I want to be considered another race. I just want to be considered like this essence, this energy, this being, this frequency. Like, why the heck am I anything other than that? And maybe that's because I've detached from my physical. I am just this like eternal soul. And, I get a lot of kickback from people who are not on the, spiritual end of the spectrum. On TikTok, I've had people say, well, if you're not your body, then throw yourself in front of a moving bus and see what happens. And I'm like, oh, dear Lord, like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, come on now. Even the people who don't resonate with this kind of messaging, like, let's not go down that path. That's not what anyone is saying. And it's okay if you don't see the same way that I see and feel and be, but why does it matter to you so much what I do?
Yeah.
Why does it matter so much what anybody else does? Unless it's really like harming you personally, then learn to authentically relate and talk about that. But you can't control what anyone else on this planet is doing.
Yeah, identity is interesting, because like you, I kind of just saw myself as a being and everyone else was being. It was like I was like colorblind in a certain way, and I thought that was a good thing actually. And then, I spoke with some Black friends. I interviewed. She was one of the leaders of a social justice movement in Canada, Black woman, and we talked about this. And it's like it's interesting in that like. It's like she wanted me to see that I was white. She wanted me to see that I had privilege. And that was kind of a unique concept to me, because I didn't want to acknowledge that or accept it, because at that point I'd be somehow accepting that we were like separate and, all this stuff. But she's like, you know what? I had a very difficult upbringing, and I actually still like life is difficult for me. And by you recognizing these things, it's in a way helping me feel like I'm seen. And I was like, wow, like, okay, I get it.
I hear you. And I hear that. And I have a good friend, Angel Robinson, who I've had on my show before. We did not talk about this, but we talk about it often. She's a Black woman herself, but she refers to herself as a goddess with beautiful brown skin. And she had the full upbringing that, one might consider to be like the non-privileged and all of these things, but she chose a different timeline. She chose a different narrative, and she is that essence of a goddess. She may have grown up with struggle and strife, but she didn't choose to hold on to that. And like, this is a hard thing for a white person to be saying, especially in this year in this day and time. But I truly do believe that we're only perpetuating negativity by staying stuck in that narrative. I really do believe that. And maybe I'm coming from a white privileged place and I can get shot on. I don't care. Pull me off the internet, do whatever you need to do. But I also believe that eventually we're not going to hold on to those narratives anymore. And we need to move away from them because we're only just trying to then make one race more dominant than the other. And also, I like to say there are more than two races on this planet if we're going to be just talking about skin color and where we're coming from. But like, it is so much. It is so much. And I feel for everyone who has dealt with those, struggles from their identity and what encasing that they were given, or what sexuality that they came into this lifetime having, or what religion they're born into, what have you. But I believe most of it to be social constructs of the mind, ways to hold back powerful, amazing creatures and beings. And if they choose to stay in that timeline and that narrative, then unfortunately that's their choice. But I don't have to. I don't have to take on guilt that I've never felt. And it's not because I'm privileged. It's because I personally have never enslaved anyone. No one in my family has, first of all. Like my entire bloodline, we just have never had slaves. Like it just is the way it is. And I'm not sorry. And I feel for our history in the past. And I also see where it came from. And I know why races, cultures, religions, genders have been stifled and put down, because they're powerful. Just as, we're seeing with the rise of divine feminine. So if you can choose a different story for yourself, then epic. And if you do perceive yourself to be an energy or just a being and others' energies and just beings, go forth, continue on. I would say yes. And you can do whatever you want to do, right? You don't have to take anything I'm saying, but it is important to know that you feel the way that you feel for a good reason, and that it isn't a negative thing. And there is no reason to feel any shame or, always have an open mind, always have an open mind. I have heard many a story where my heartstrings were really pulled, and I get it. And I don't like to see what happens in the United States, most especially to races, genders, and sexualities and religions that are unlike my own. It sucks. It sucks. Totally. Compassion.
Yeah, really, really interesting. It's very interesting. The topic of race, even like gender. It's like I was listening to it's like a YouTube video of transgender athletes. There was two biological males who, identified as female, and so they joined. I believe it was like track and field, and they ended up winning 1 and 2, first place and second place, against biological females, and they ended up winning 3 years in a row. And the woman who was being interviewed was saying, like, because these two like biological males who identified as female took these 2 top spots, some of the women, like, they aren't getting the scholarships. Like, it actually does have effects. And like, personally, I think it's kind of dumb to have a biological male compete against biological females in sports. I'm all for people identifying whatever they want, and I think it's a beautiful thing that we should actually teach kids at a young age, just to like be more fluid. But there are certain lines that I think we should kind of keep, and maybe there could be like a transgender sport area, something like that.
Totally. And I feel that, and that is opening neural pathways of mine, that it's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be so strongly spoken and believed towards what I just spoke of. At the same time, I know that I believe the things I believe for good reason. And so it is about, I think, finding that balance. And I can see and hear and feel all of that as to be true as well. So it's an interesting concept. But I think that like what really worries me is the amount of people who have these ideas and feel stifled from even sharing them because they're afraid of the backlash that they're going to receive. So that's why I guess I am so full fervently like, I don't really care anymore. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I'm going to believe what I'm going to believe. And you can like, we can talk about it. We can talk about it. Know that I have full, unadulterated, unconditional acceptance and love because I've developed that for myself. Therefore, I view everyone and everything as divine in creation and purposeful and powerful. So yes, to all of it.
I
I
love
just,
the energy you bring.
oh,
I,
thank
I
you.
it's yeah, it's very good, and it's good to hear, and it's good for you to speak so openly about it because like I would consider myself politically speaking like I'm in the middle, but I would lean more towards the left.
Mhm.
However, especially this year, the more extreme side of the left has embraced this whole like cancel culture thing where there's like so much anger where if you say the wrong thing or if you said the wrong thing like 7 years ago on Twitter, it's like no, you can't host the Oscars. No, you're gonna get canceled, and that's actually horrible for the evolution of our social dynamic as humans because what it does is it makes people scared to speak out. It makes people scared to like share their truth because what if their truth like maybe we are ignorant. I'm ignorant to many things and unless I know, I don't know. So I need to be able to share and I need people to tell me in a compassionate way, "Hey, when you say this or that, it hurts my feelings." Like um I didn't when I was interviewing some of these people, I didn't know if how to should I refer to you as black or African American? She was in Canada, so she can't be an African American, And it was a really like candid conversation about like a confused white guy who gets to ask questions and just have it be like, and she was super cool about cancel culture is not good for our current society, and what we should have is a communication culture, conversation culture, where everything is a conversation.
Everything should be a conversation. And I really do appreciate what you said. Thank you for seeing and hearing and feeling the energy that I do bring and accepting me with compassion and love and not canceling me for having maybe some different beliefs. That's really beautiful because it is a weird part of today's culture. And I definitely, when I felt I had to choose a political side, would say the exact same thing. I went a little bit more left, but I am seeing all of a sudden, like, if you don't believe everything, you're done. You're blocked on Facebook. You're banished to the outskirts of society. I'm like, wait a minute, we're supposed to be unifying as humanity. Like, no, no, no. And so it's a beautiful thing. And I love that you got to have that conversation. And I'm really grateful to have this conversation. And it looks like we're about time here, but I wanted to give you a moment to share, plug anything you need to plug that you want to share with the world, maybe a little last Michael excerpt of your essence to wrap this up.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Really awesome conversation. I love your perspective. It makes sense, and it's something that I feel like we should continue. I would love to have you on my podcast. We could continue the conversation kind of from the other dynamic where I get to ask you questions, which I think would be a lot of fun.
Yay, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, and so people can find me at Deep Shift on Instagram, and then that has my links everywhere. MichaelArmstrong.b is my website. .be is the domain. And I've got some really cool things coming up that I'm planning right now. I can give you like a little insight into what I'm planning, but I do a lot of podcasts, and what I'm planning for the future is to do live podcasts where anyone can tune in, watch it live. At the end, they can ask the guest questions, and then after that, there's a social event where people get to meet each other. And I just did on 11/11 a social event, which was so cool because Zoom lets you do breakout rooms. So everyone joined one room, and then I had everyone break out into groups of 5, and then I had questions that they could ask each other. And it was a lot of fun. It was super cool. So I'm going to do events like this. It's going to become like an online sort of event thing. It's still ideating in my mind. But if you do want to be involved in that or get notified, just follow me on Deep Shift on Instagram, and I'll be posting more about it there.
Awesome.
Um,
I'll share all of your links as well in the episode description. So No one
Thank you.
has to do too much digging, but definitely go follow him. And you're on TikTok too, as just Michael Armstrong, I think.
It's Michael Armstrong 4-4. I believe it's 4-4 or maybe 3-4s, 2 or 3 4s, whatever wasn't taken. But if you go on my Instagram, it's got the link tree that has just everything. And yeah, I love TikTok is so cool right now. But yeah, I just want to thank you for this experience and for the energy that you bring. I like you. You're New Yorker, just outspoken. You share your mind, and it's wonderful. We need more people like you on this planet.
Oh, blessings. Thank you. Thank you. They're coming about. They're just warming up their throat chakra. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
Good.
Mhm.
Good.
All right, Michael. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you, and I will see you soon.
Thank you. Likewise.